Have you ever wondered if you've already peaked in your career? Or felt like starting fresh is both thrilling and terrifying? If so, this episode is for you. Maybe you've been in a role that defined you for years, and you built success or a successful business or just a successful role on that. But now you know it's time to move on. But leaving the familiar can be quite scary. You've accomplishing big things, but now you're left asking, what's next? You're not alone, and there is a way forward. Welcome to the Adventure Reignition Podcast. Today we're going to talk about career transition and several problems that you might be experiencing right now, like peaking at your current career and role or being afraid to leave that behind, being imprisoned by your competence because you've been praised and you got a lot of applause for that. And finally, I'll share with you some practical steps to help you start on that journey to find what I call your new aligned Everest. I'm really excited to dive into this episode with you. First, I want to thank you for being here. If you're a new listener, thank you as well. Or if you've been a regular listener to the show over the last couple of months or years, thank you so much for being part of this journey and adventure. And before we dive into the episode, I would love if you could give me a review either on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you are now on YouTube, because I started this year to record more in videos of those podcasts. Please subscribe to the podcast or just leave a thumbs up because it really helps get this message of adventure out. All right, let's dive into this episode about career transition, a topic I'm really passionate about, and I'm really excited to make for the first time a very complete episode, especially for you if you are an executive or CEO or you just like started your business in the past and made it grow for several years and you feel you picked and now it's like very hard to transition into something else. And that's the first point that I call the post-success dilemma. And honestly, if you feel lost after leaving a role or a business that defined you for years, it's very difficult. And it's normal to feel lost because you attach so much of your identity to your role or your business or anything that may be close to who you think you are professionally, that once you literally go away from that, you really feel like something in you is a part of you has been ripped off. And that's normal, and that's why you enter in this transition phase where you feel lost, things get scary, and it's a bit uncertain. But if you are in that position, it may be challenging, but I can guarantee you that once you're out of this period, and if you embrace this time, you will look few years from now, you look back at this moment, and you will be grateful for that because it means that you will be somehow, professionally at least, be born again, whatever you do. And that's what we're going to be covering in this episode today. And especially if you had a lot of success, you may be afraid that nothing will compare to the past peak you experienced. And maybe now that you actually did something successful, at least from the outside, you may be craving for more meaning, purpose, and fulfillment, but without the intensity of burnout, because I know it can be pretty intimidating. And if I haven't experienced myself on a professional way, I did experience something similar when I traveled the world in 2016. For a year alone, I visited 17 countries in 12 months. I was basically moving every 3 days to a new place. And at the end, honestly, as crazy as it may sound, I felt burnout from traveling, because moving every 3 days is a lot. But I experienced so many experiences that I felt I lived 10 lives in 1 year. And definitely the intensity was at its peak, the adrenaline was at its peak, the landscape, the people I met, everything made that year the peak of my life at the end. And I remember when I came back, I actually did a video in French when I came back where I talk about this openly, that if I don't set myself new goals or new perspectives, I will look at my life and look at the past all my life thinking about that time, and I would be depressed the rest of my life. So I kind of like experienced something like that, and I realized that I needed something slower, more sustainable, and just live my adventures on a different way. So it definitely forced me to be in a position of reinvention, even if I was still exploring a lot of who I was and what I wanted to do with my life, and also new places I wanted to visit. And there's a stat that I found very surprising about people like you in that situation that was very interesting. 70% of executives face identity crisis after leaving leadership roles, according to the Harvard Business Review. And reinventing yourself professionally and personally is a common but rarely discussed challenge. And that's true, because I talked to several people with responsibilities, either managers, CEOs, executives, and sometimes it can be really like lonely roles, and it's hard to discuss those challenges either with your superiors or the people you manage. So it can be quite scary to experience such an identity or midlife crisis, however you want to call it. And one of the thing that maybe is preventing you to move forward with your career and start maybe something fresh is the competence cage. Because you've been celebrated for your expertise, but you started to feel a bit daunting over that, and you feels there's something different from you. Staying in what is familiar is quite tempting and comforting, even if it doesn't excite you anymore. I feel we live in a society where discomfort is scary, and in the contrary, where we constantly look for comfort. And you in that position, going back to your skills or what you've been praised for is definitely comforting. And maybe because you're afraid of embracing the discomfort again, you might stay in that zone that feels good to you, even if you don't like it anymore. I personally experienced something a bit similar on my own journey. After 4 years of work and studying business, I didn't see a path forward for me. following that path or going a job and climbing the corporate ladder, I could see people at different jobs I had. It wasn't exciting for me. That wasn't the life I wanted to live. And that's why I kind of like quit my job to travel the world after my studies, because I wanted to explore, test, and just get to know myself on a deeper level, because I couldn't see any path forward for me if I would just follow what I call the conventional path. And if you like stay in that cage and you stay in the comfort, you will slowly observe something, that your direction is drifting away from what you deeply want. And then, because you don't have a clear, aligned Everest, as I call it, you really start to feel like you're going through the motion, and you don't really take ownership of creating and designing your own new path. And that's why this transition period is really important. But all those feelings doesn't diminish your previous and current success, but it really gives you the signal that you are now ready for a growth period and ready to embrace that new chapter. And for me, the path forward is to find your aligned Everest, your purpose, or your new role, or whatever you want to call it. And I have 4 steps that can get you started on that journey. The first one is to actually start slowing down and reflect on your personal journey. Start to see where you were 5 years ago and where you are right now. Identify your values and some of the patterns that give you past achievement meaning. Because if you look back and you can identify some part of your journey that give you meaning, that may be something you can take and use in your next step. Step number 2 is to embrace the beginner's mindset and reframe that insecurity that you might experience and feel as an opportunity to explore new things and grow. And I know it might be difficult for you, because as you've been really competent and praised and you had crazy results, it might be really uncomfortable to start over and being a beginner again. That's something I personally enjoy, because it means I'm learning new things and I'm exploring new perspective, and maybe I'm growing a skill. Or for me, it's a learning process, and I love to grow and learn, so it might come more naturally, but I can understand that just focusing on your own skills might be comforting. But embrace the beginner mindset once again. Step number 3 is to redefine success. Try to really shift from the external validation you might have experienced in your previous and successful roles. Because if you move forward trying to please others and trying to replicate the external success, you will make that difference between what you are doing and what you deeply want to do inside grow up more apart, and making you even more depressed and misaligned with your next step. So really try to focus on internal fulfillment. It could be used by focusing on things you're curious about, a new skill you want to master, a new activity you want to start, maybe a role where you want to have more freedom in creating things on your own terms, and maybe finding something that brings more purpose and that is bigger than yourself. That would be somehow on the 5 intrinsic motivators that can really help you focus on the internal fulfillment. Step number 4, and last step, take small intentional steps. Experiment with what I call micro adventures, or some 60 to 90 days commitments to build momentum. I think this is really important for many reasons, because if you try something and you straight away dismiss it, you're never gonna cross that desert to find the joy after that. What I mean, to be practical and concrete, I'll give 2 examples. The first one is people starting to go at the gym. Usually we say in the gym realm that it takes 6 to 8 weeks to see the first results. So if you're not aware of that, after being in the gym for 3 weeks and seeing any results, you might give up before to actually see the results, one, and then to actually enjoy the process. So that's why I think it's really important to give yourself 60 to 90 days doing that new micro adventure, whether it's a skill you want to learn, a topic you wanted to explore. Try to commit for a period of time to 60 to 90 days. And I can relate to that because I had a kind of like a hate and love relationship with video creation. So I had this idea when I started to make videos that I could make them quick. And I remember the first couple of videos I created, sometimes for a 30 seconds to 1 minute video, it would take me 6 hours to create. And for me, it was crazy. And then I got better into the thing. And it got even longer because as I was becoming a better videographer and editor, I started to add up some effects, some principle, and a lot of things as I was learning. And I kind of like thought for myself, this is not sustainable. It's taking way too much time for me to create a 2 to 3 minutes video. I was sometimes editing for, 15 hours. And I wasn't really accepting that as a real part of the job. And after the pandemic, and even during the pandemic, when I came back to editing again, I understood it was part of the process. It's because I was actually committing to it and embracing the whole thing as it was, I started to enjoy it a lot. And now I'm like on Instagram, I produce almost 1 video a day. Not every day, but around at least 5 a week. It's a video. And I really love it. It's challenging, it's not easy, but I really love the process of creating a video now because I accepted the fact that one, it could take time. And now because I have put in the hours, I'm able to reduce that time because I'm more efficient, because I'm mastering the process. And I'm still getting better every time today. So my point here is take small intentional steps and create those micro adventures about a skill, an interest, something that you're curious about, you want to test for 60 to 90 days and see how it goes. Maybe you want to start coaching, so maybe try to see about the coaching world for 90 days. Maybe you just want to completely shift your career and start a new thing. Maybe it's about creativity, so you want to start photography and commit for 60 to 90 days. And one example that I want to showcase about that whole process. So step 1, reflect on your journey. Step 2, embrace the beginner's mindset. And step 3, redefine your success. And step 4, take small intentional steps. One of the examples I love to share, it's not related to career specifically, but it's a French YouTuber I didn't know until last fall in 2024, where he just launched a whole documentary about his journey from not being a mountain guy at all to climb Everest in 1 year. And for me, it really showcased that process because he reflected on his journey and identified his values and the things he really wanted to do, and he wanted to explore and test new things. And all around the documentary that you can watch on YouTube, also in English, because it's been dubbed in English, you see that he really embraced the beginner's mindset, and he did a lot of mistakes, and he had a guide with him along the documentary and the whole project to help him get a better hiker. And the whole process for him was, yes, the perspective and the goal was to climb Everest, and it maybe feel that he's looking for external validation, but from the documentary, if you have the chance to watch it, you will see that for him it was a pursuit of transformation. And you really see through the documentary from the beginning and the end that this adventure completely transformed his outlook and perspective on life. And that's the power of adventure. And then one of his lessons of the documentary was get better 1% every day. Take one step after the other and get into movement. And that was one of his key messages from the documentary. And that's exactly what he has done. He gave himself 1 year to do this. He focused for 1 year. And now he loved it so much, the process, that he says in recent interviews that he wants to keep going to the mountains because he really discovered himself and a new passion. So that's an example of the 4 steps I mentioned here that I think can really show you the power of following them. And why is it worth it? I mentioned it a little bit before in this episode. But I really feel that our society is going through what I call a comfort crisis. Everything we have at our hands now is to create more comfort. Nowadays, you don't even need to go to the grocery because you can have them delivered straight to you, or use Uber Eats to eat something instead of going to the shop. And everything is done in our society to make us feel more and more comfortable. And I think it's really something that drains our energy and passion over time. And for me, this is worth it. The whole process is worth it because it helps you step into the unknown. And it will help you reignite creativity and challenge you in new ways and leads to really authentic and meaningful changes. And I can definitely relate to that over my ton of adventures. I always came back with something that changed my perspective, a new understanding about myself, or something that would be a defining moment for the next couple of steps I would take. I can definitely relate to the fact that traveling for me, as I was moving to places a lot, it really sparked my creativity in many ways. I would challenge what I think was true based on my life and environments back home, and now I was on my own in the other side of the world. I would see things that would be impossible to believe back home. And traveling and seeing a lot of new things in such a short period of time really sparked my creativity. And that's how I started photography in the first place. I was like, okay, I'm seeing so many places. I wanted to test photography, and I was taking at least one photo a day to grow. And I felt so creative during my trip. And setting myself up a challenge to post one photo a day for a year during my trip around the world just challenged me to grow and improve on my photography. And at the end, it led me to embracing a career as a creator. Just from being in the unknown and embracing discomfort, to starting taking photos, to challenging myself to post one picture every day for a year. And it started to become a video game for me, almost like a video game. I would take pictures, see how I could use my camera to take better pictures, see how I can frame better the photos. And I was like watching tutorials, and then I met photographers that taught me the basics of photography, and it becomes a game. And if I watch my photos from back then in 2016 to today, I learned so much. And that was because of me challenging myself and embracing the unknown and having an adventure, creating those shifts. You don't have to navigate this alone. And that's the reason why I've created a whole coaching program based on my years of adventure, of my self-discovery, my researches, and interviewing more than 40 people on the podcast that are inspiring to really help you craft what I call your next aligned Everest and really confidently identify your next career move based on who you are, your passions, and your strength, so that you can really find meaning, fulfillment, and purpose moving forward. And that's something that is so rewarding, that if you want to really start to embrace that transition and that adventure with me, DM me Reigniter on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and we'll start together crafting the next chapter of your life and see if we can work together. And that's something I'm deeply passionate about, because I think once you really live and craft a career aligned to who you are and based on what you love doing, your whole perspective shifts. And it's not about the pressure, it's not about the burnout, it's not about the praise, it's about what you love from inside and who you are. And it's not easy every day, but at least it's an adventure you enjoy. And I think the self-discovery is exactly what you need if you, on top of that, add that adventure spirit that I want people to embrace. And yeah, I really think that the chapter you just closed or you're closing was incredible. Whether you have built a business over the last 10 years and you feel now off and wanting to pivot, or maybe it's not about pivoting, maybe it's just about reorganizing your whole processes so that you can be less involved into this. And if you are a CEO or a leadership role, a manager, executive, maybe it's time for you to embrace that next step aligned to who you are and find really the joy in the work instead of the grind and the praise and conforming to others. And this is part of your story. And even if I felt the same way after my travel, your best days are not necessarily behind you. They are ahead. So I want to finish this episode with my favorite quote of all time from Helen Keller that says it's the best. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And the adventure is waiting. Take the first step.